I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I mean, people talk about family drama all the time, right? But when it's your own life, your own family falling apart in front of your eyes, it hits differently. And let me tell you, what happened to me is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. So here's the deal. My mom remarried about 5 years ago. First, everything seemed perfect. Her new husband, Jazz, was this charming, smooth-talking guy who seemed like he stepped straight out of a rom-com. He treated my mom like a queen. Flowers, fancy dinners, and he even got along with me. Honestly, I thought he was too good to be true. Turns out I was right. It started small, little things I didn't pay much attention to at first. Jack would always compliment me like, "You look so grown up today," or "That color looks amazing on you," and enough, right? But then his compliments started to feel different, like too personal, too intense. And I'm not talking about the kind of compliments you get from your friends or even your mom's friends. These felt uncomfortable. One night, things got weirder. My mom had gone to visit my grandma, who was sick, and Jack offered to pick me up from my friend's house. I didn't think much of it. He was my stepdad after all. But the car ride home was odd. He kept asking me personal questions that felt way too invasive. Stuff like, "Do you have a boyfriend?" Or "What kind of guys are you into?" I laughed it off at first, thinking he was just being awkward, but deep down something felt off. When we got home, I headed straight to my room, wanting to shake off the weird vibes, but before I could close my door, Jack called out, "Hey, can we talk for a second?" I froze, my heart started racing, and I had no idea why. Reluctantly, I walked back to the living room, where he was sitting on the couch, looking unusually serious. "I just want you to know," he started, "that I think you're an amazing young woman. You're smart, beautiful, and anyone would be lucky to have you." I nodded awkwardly, muttering a quick thanks, and tried to leave, but then he added, "If you ever need someone to talk to about anything, I'm here for you." At the time, I brushed it off as him being overly friendly, but looking back, I wish I'd seen it for what it really was. A red flag. And trust me, the worst was yet to come. A few days passed, and I tried to convince myself that I was overthinking. Maybe Jack was just being nice, and I was making it into something it wasn't. But then things started to escalate. It was a Saturday afternoon, and my mom was running errands. I was home alone, scrolling on my phone in the living room when Jack walked in. He sat down on the other end of the couch and started making small talk, asking about school, my friends, and my plans for the weekend. At first, it felt like a normal conversation, but then out of nowhere, he said something that stopped me in my tracks. "You know, I think you're the most mature person in this house. You're not like most girls your age." I laughed nervously, unsure of how to respond. Thanks, I guess." He smiled, leaning in slightly. "Mean it. You've got this confidence about you. It's really attractive." That word, attractive, made my stomach drop. I didn't know what to say, so I mumbled something about needing to finish some homework and hurried off to my room. Once the door was shut, I sat on my bed, heart pounding. Was I imagining things, or was Jack crossing a line? I decided not to tell my mom. She was so happy with him, and I didn't want to ruin that. Plus, what if I was wrong? What if I was just misinterpreting things? I told myself to stay cautious but not jump to conclusions. The next few weeks, Jack seemed normal again. I started to relax, thinking maybe it really had been all in my head. But then came the night that changed everything. My mom had a late-night work meeting, so Jack and I were alone at home. I was in the kitchen making a snack when he walked in. "You've been avoiding me," he said, his tone light, but his eyes serious. I shrugged, pretending I didn't know what he was talking about. "I've just been busy, I guess." He stepped closer, too close, and lowered his voice. "You don't have to be shy around me. We're family, remember?" I felt trapped, my back pressed against the counter. I laughed nervously, trying to diffuse the tension. "Yeah, of course, family." But then he reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "You're really something special, you know that?" Froze. My mind was screaming at me to move, to say something, but I couldn't. Just then, the sound of the garage door opening broke the moment. My mom was home. Jack stepped back, his expression unreadable, and casually walked out of the kitchen like nothing had happened. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the moment in my head, trying to make sense of it. Was he testing me, or was I reading too much into it again? The next morning, Jack acted like everything was normal, joking with my mom over breakfast and asking about my plans for the day. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. And I wasn't wrong because what I discovered next would confirm everything. After that night, I couldn't look at Jack the same way. Every time he entered the room, I felt this overwhelming need to escape. I tried to keep my distance, but it wasn't easy. Jack was always around, always watching. I told myself I was just imagining things, but deep down I knew better. Then, one afternoon, while my mom was out running errands, I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. Jack was sitting at the dining table, typing on his laptop. He looked up and smiled when he saw me. "Hey, you got a second?" he asked casually. I hesitated but nodded, hoping it was just something harmless. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit down for a minute." Reluctantly, I walked over. I did. He closed his laptop and leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. "Listen, I feel like there's been this weird tension between us lately, and I don't want that. We're family and I care about you." I forced a smile, trying to act normal. "Yeah, sure, no tension here." He chuckled softly. "Good, because I've been thinking about how much I admire you. You're not like other girls your age. You're different, special." There it was again, that word special. My stomach churned. Before I could respond, he reached across the table and placed his hand on mine. "You can trust me, you know. I'll always be here for you." I pulled my hand away, mumbling something about needing to finish homework, and quickly left the room. My hands were shaking as I closed the door to my bedroom. I wanted to scream, cry, do anything to get rid of the creeping dread that was taking over me. That night, I decided I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I texted my best friend, Emily, and told her everything. She called me immediately, her voice filled with concern. "Are you serious? That's not okay, like, at all. You need to tell your mom." "I can't," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "She's so happy with him. What if she doesn't believe me?" Emily sighed. "Then you need proof. If he's really acting like this, he'll slip up eventually. Just be careful, okay?" Her words stuck with me. Proof, that's what I needed. I couldn't accuse Jack without something concrete to back me up. The next day I started paying closer attention. I noticed the way Jack's eyes lingered on me a little too long when I walked into a room, the way he always found excuses to be near me even when it wasn't necessary. And then it happened. One evening, I was heading downstairs to grab a snack when I heard voices coming from the living room. I peeked around the corner and saw Jack on the phone. "She's just incredible," he said, his tone low and almost affectionate. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Who was he talking about? "I know it's wrong," he continued, "but I can't help how I feel." I quickly ducked back around the corner, my mind racing. Was he talking about me, or was it someone else? Either way, it was clear Jack was hiding something. I knew then that I had to figure out what was really going on, no matter how much it hurt. But what I found next was something I never could have prepared for. That night I couldn't sleep. Jack's words from the phone call echoed in my head. "I know it's wrong, but I can't help how I feel." Was he talking about me? Someone else? The uncertainty was eating me alive. The next day I made up my mind. If Jack was hiding something, I was going to find out what it was. I started paying closer attention to everything he did. When he left the house, how he acted around my mom, even the way he spoke to me. And it didn't take long for things to get even more suspicious. A few days later, Jack left his phone on the kitchen counter while he stepped outside to take a call on the house phone. My heart raced as I stared at his phone, knowing this might be my chance. I hesitated, debating whether or not to invade his privacy, but curiosity and desperation won out. I grabbed the phone, unlocked it, thankfully he hadn't set a passcode, and started scrolling. At first everything seemed normal, emails, texts, apps, but then I opened his photo gallery. My stomach dropped. There were pictures of me. Not just any pictures, though. Pictures I didn't even know had been taken. Me reading in the living room, me watching TV, me in the kitchen. None of them were inappropriate, but the fact that he'd taken them without me knowing sent a chill down my spine. I quickly put the phone back where I'd found it, my hands shaking. What was I supposed to do now? Was this enough to confront him, to tell my mom, or did I need more proof? That night, I couldn't hide my unease. Jack noticed, of course he always noticed. "You okay?" he asked, his tone casual as he passed me in the hallway. "Yeah, I'm fine," I replied, avoiding eye contact. But I wasn't fine. How could I be, knowing what I knew? A few days later, I got my chance to gather more evidence. Jack had left his laptop open on the dining table, and curiosity got the better of me. I sat down and opened his email. At first, everything seemed normal. Work emails, receipts, the usual. But then I found a draft folder, and inside that folder was a message he'd never sent. It read, "I can't keep pretending everything is okay. I feel trapped, and I don't know what to do. There's someone else I can't stop thinking about, and it's tearing me apart." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. There was no name, no clear indication of who he was talking about, but I had a sinking feeling that I already knew before I could read any further. I heard the sound of the garage door opening. My mom was home. I quickly closed the laptop and ran to my room, my mind spinning. If Jack was planning to act on whatever feelings he had, I had to stop it, but how? And then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I caught him in the act, red-handed. It happened late one evening. My mom had gone to a friend's house for a late dinner, leaving Jack and me alone. I stayed in my room, trying to avoid him as much as possible, but then I got thirsty and had to go to the kitchen. As I walked down the hall, I noticed something odd. The door to Jack's office was slightly open, and the light was on. I could hear faint noises, almost like whispers. My curiosity got the better of me, and I crept closer, careful not to make a sound. Peeking through the crack in the door, my heart nearly stopped. Jack was sitting at his desk with his phone in his hand. He wasn't just talking to someone, he was video chatting. I strained to hear what he was saying, and that's when I heard it. "I just can't stop thinking about her. She's right here under my roof, and it's driving me crazy." My stomach turned. Who was he talking about? Was it me? Someone else? Had to know. I pulled out my phone and started recording, capturing every word. Jack continued, oblivious to the fact that I was just feet away, listening to his every word. "I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. I just need to figure out how to handle this without ruining everything." The person on the other end of the call said something, but I couldn't make out their response. Jack nodded, running a hand through his hair. "No. I just need more time. I couldn't take it anymore." My hands were shaking as I quietly backed away and hurried to my room, my mind racing. This was it. This was the proof I needed. But then, just as I was closing my bedroom door, I heard Jack's office door creak open. My heart stopped. Did he hear me? I quickly climbed into bed, pretending to be asleep. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps in the hallway. They stopped right outside my door. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't come in. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps retreated, and I heard the sound of his office door closing again. I let out a shaky breath, my mind spinning with what I had just witnessed. The next morning, I showed the recording to my best friend Emily. Her eyes widened as she watched, and when it was over, she looked at me with a mix of shock and anger. "This is it," she said. "You have to tell your mom. There's no way she can ignore this." I nodded, my resolve finally firm. It was time to confront Jack and tell my mom the truth. But before I could, something happened that made everything even more complicated. The very next day, I woke up to an unusual silence in the house. Normally, Jack would already be up, drinking his coffee or scrolling on his phone, but the house felt eerily empty. I crept downstairs and to my surprise, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Had to step out for a bit. Be back later. Jack. The note didn't sit right with me. Something about it felt off. I decided it was now or never. I was going to tell my mom everything as soon as she got home. I spent the next hour pacing my room, rehearsing how I'd break the news. But then something happened that made my blood run cold. I heard the unmistakable ping of a notification coming from Jack's laptop. My curiosity got the better of me and I decided to check it out. When I opened the laptop, I was met with a series of messages from an unknown contact. At first they seemed vague, like random texts between friends, but then one of the messages made my heart stop. Did she find out yet? You have to be more careful. I scrolled up, my hands trembling. The conversation was full of cryptic messages about timing and not ruining everything, and then I saw it. A photo attachment of me. It wasn't anything inappropriate, but the fact that it existed at all made my stomach churn. The messages painted a picture I couldn't ignore. Jack had been talking to someone about me, about whatever feelings he had, and they were both trying to figure out how to keep it hidden. Suddenly, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Jack was back. Panicking, I quickly closed the laptop and ran back to my room. My heart was pounding as I locked the door behind me and tried to calm down. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to act now. I texted my mom. Can you come home as soon as possible? I need to talk to you about something important. A few minutes later, she replied. I'm on my way. Everything okay? I didn't answer. Couldn't. The thought of having to explain everything to her made my chest tighten, but I knew it had to be done. When my mom finally got home, I pulled her aside into the living room and told her everything. The uncomfortable comments, the photos, the messages, and the video recording. She listened in stunned silence, her face growing paler with every word. When I finished, she sat back, her hands shaking. Are you absolutely sure about this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I have proof, I said, pulling out my phone to show her the recording. Her expression hardened as she watched the video, and when it was over, she stood up abruptly. Stay here, she said, her voice firm. Before I could say anything, she marched upstairs to confront Jack. My heart raced as I listened to the muffled shouting coming from their bedroom. It felt like an eternity before she came back downstairs, her face a mix of anger and heartbreak. I need you to pack a bag, she said, her voice trembling. We're leaving. Where are we going? I asked, confused. To your grandma's, she said. I need time to figure this out. As I packed my things, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. But one thing was clear. Our lives would never be the same again. What Jack did next, however, proved that this wasn't over. We left the house in a rush, my mom barely saying a word as we drove to my grandma's. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. I could tell she was furious, but more than that, she was heartbroken. When we arrived, my grandma greeted us with a confused expression. What's going on? Why are you here so late? My mom shook her head. I'll explain later. We just need a place to stay for now. I spent the night tossing and turning, unable to shake the feeling that Jack wasn't going to let this go. I kept my phone close, half expecting him to call or text, but it stayed silent. The next morning, while my mom was on the phone with a lawyer, I got a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Please don't do this. I can explain everything. My stomach turned. It was Jack. I didn't respond. Instead, I showed the message to my mom, who immediately called the lawyer back to discuss filing a restraining order. I thought that would be the end of it, that Jack would finally back off. But I was wrong. That evening, as we sat in my grandma's living room, there was a knock at the door. My heart raced as my mom went to answer it. I stayed in the back, peeking around the corner to see who it was. It was Jack. He looked disheveled, like he hadn't slept, and he was holding a folder in his hands. I just need to talk, he said, his voice desperate. My mom stood her ground, blocking the doorway. You need to leave, she said firmly. I don't want you anywhere near us. Please, Jack begged, his voice breaking. I made a mistake, but it's not what you think. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain, my mom snapped. You crossed a line, and now you're going to deal with the consequences. Jack's expression hardened. You don't understand, he said, his tone shifting. If you take this to court, it'll ruin everything for all of us. My mom didn't flinch. That's a risk I'm willing to take. Now leave before I call the police. Jack hesitated for a moment, his eyes darting to me as I stood in the background. For a second, I thought he might try to push past my mom, but then he turned and walked away, slamming the car door behind him as he left. The encounter left us all shaken, but it only strengthened my mom's resolve. She filed the restraining order the very next day and began the process of separating from Jack. But even as the legal battle unfolded, the emotional scars lingered. My mom struggled to come to terms with the betrayal, and I wrestled with the guilt of having kept quiet for so long. In the end, though, we found a way to move forward. My mom focused on rebuilding her life, and I learned to trust my instincts and speak up when something feels wrong. As for Jack, he disappeared from our lives after the court proceedings, and we haven't heard from him since. But every now and then, I catch myself looking over my shoulder, wondering if he's still out there waiting for another chance.